Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Future Dreamers. I'm so excited to have this guest on today. We have Dana Jung. She is an intuitive graphic designer and just all around creative, and she leads spiritual entrepreneurs through finding their branding voice from a visual perspective. She's going to tell you all about this in her own words. But we have a bunch of really fascinating topics to get into today about spiritual entrepreneurship, navigating spiritual awakenings, and how that can kind of like set you on a whole new career track, all of the limiting beliefs and like fear facing you do as you figure that out for yourself. And then Dana's going to tell us how she actually leads clients through the branding journey with this intuitive, empathetic skill set that she's developed in her own life. And I'm just so excited to get into it, Dana. So please give us in your own words kind of like who you are, who you serve, and where you are on your spiritual entrepreneur journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, I am an intuitive designer and I focus on branding, design, and web. I think that I create really intuitive, high vibe, creative assets to support spiritual entrepreneurs in following their soul's purpose.
I love that. I mean, not only is like the market for that just growing and growing and growing, but I feel like the like people be maybe 5 years ago people didn't even know that services, like yours existed and that there's people who can bring like serious intuition to, the branding world where you're not just letting, capitalism dictate what your vibe and style should look like. You're bringing intuition into this and like really helping heart-centered entrepreneurs like feel the best, look the best, and like get the visuals of their brand out into the world. And so congratulations for doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about, this era we're in, as we've mentioned, where spiritual entrepreneurship is really blooming and flourishing. And that's kind of bringing an element of, people letting their spirituality be public and be, like a cornerstone of their services, and also bringing their authenticity to the forefront. And, all of that kind of wrapping into heart-centered business. How has your journey into spiritual entrepreneurship gone? Can you tell us a little bit about just like how you decided to become a spiritual entrepreneur and just what that journey's been like for you?
Yeah, so I never expected to be a spiritual entrepreneur. The story starts in the shower one day.
Cool.
Uh, and I can maybe talk a little bit about my spiritual awakening because that's part of the story. But come from the tech world. I was in corporate tech for over 15 years, and I got laid off last March, and that set off like a complete spiritual awakening, transformation, lots of tower moments, lots of emotional healing and self-discovery. And during this time where I was trying to figure out my life and at the time continuing to look for full-time work in that same space, I was taking a shower one day and my guides tapped in and talked to me and they whispered that it's my role to help the helpers. And I saw myself creating the website that is now my website for my spiritual business. And I kind of had it off as a side thing for a very long time, up until very recently, where I knew that I had to commit to myself and that the path that I was on previously just no longer aligned. Like, as I looked for jobs in that space, I just got a visceral reaction, like I was wearing a sweater that didn't fit anymore. Like it was itchy, like I couldn't keep it on anymore. So I just had to toss that aside and really make the scary commitment to myself that this is the path that I'm supposed to be on. This is the path that I'm going to commit to. And I enrolled in Emily's coaching program and really committed to not looking for work anymore and doing this full time.
Wow. First of all, congratulations on that bravery. I mean, it is like, as you mentioned, tower moments. They can be pretty scary, like, and they might come in multiples, but, understanding, like when you get to that place of surrender where you can really hear your intuition come through and say, this like, tower moment where things are just shaking all around me and things that I've depended on for maybe years or more than decades are falling down around me, but it's actually for me, is like that takes a lot of courage to get to the place that you can actually hear that and then start to take action on that. So I would love it if you, so yeah, just congratulations on that whole front.
Thank you.
And, like we don't know each other deeply, but I'm super proud of you. So just to
Oh, thank
reflect that
you.
back
I'm
to
proud
you.
of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, can you tell us about a little bit about how your spiritual awakening came about, what it was like to just like realize you were even in one, and then anything that happened, anything that you realized like I'm like listening to my intuition, even heavier because I need more than just my five senses to get through this crazy time of transition, and just how that may have like impacted your career transition. You kind of touched on that, but just would love to hear more about like the nitty-gritty details of spiritual awakenings, because so many people in corporate America are going through them. And like when we have to leave the kind of crazy, often toxic cocoons that corporate jobs like can sometimes be, and we don't have like a big group of friends or community just cheering us on as we go through big change, it can really like be some shake up moments. So anything you can share, I think will really help listeners. Just let them know that they're not alone if this happens to them.
Yeah, totally. So my awakening, I think it really started when I was let go, and it was one of the scariest moments that I've ever had in my adult life to really, in addition to some other things that happened, but like that was a big moment where all of the perceived security that I felt in my life at the time was just dismantled. And since that moment, lots of things have kind of dissolved or fallen away, and really left me to find the security within myself. And I can get to that in a little bit, but that really relates to like the need to trust in myself and my intuition. So after I was let go, I went on this trip to Mexico with my friend because why not? I didn't have a job. And
Yeah.
so I think we stepped into this portal and we really just came into ourselves. She's one of my spiritual best friends. Everyone needs a spiritual best friend. Highly recommend it. But we really just tapped into our intuition. We pulled cards, things that we were always interested in, but we kind of really fell into the practice, into the ritual of it all. And I think, a lot of that had to do with where I was in that journey in my life and all of the things that I was going through, being able to lean on something outside of the security that I had previously felt. So, anyway, we binged one of our favorite spiritual podcasts called Spirit Speakers. Highly recommend it. And we really just went deep. We just consumed a ton of content. We practiced our telepathy. We talked about psychic stuff. And then since that trip and that moment, it's kind of just been a whirlwind. So I took my first psychic program to develop my clairs and really clean out and focus on my chakras and my spiritual hygiene, which is something that's really important to me. I have taken the first two levels of Reiki. I have been attuned to be a Reiki practitioner, and I think that that's really helped me to tap into my own energetic abilities. And I think spiritual awakening for me has been really about coming home to myself and remembering my own divinity and power. And I think that that's why this journey has been so life-changing, because it hasn't given me anything that wasn't already in myself. It's really just given me a way to remember how magical I really am and all of the magic that has been within me this whole time. And I think part of this journey has been reflecting on ways in which I've been spiritual my whole life and haven't really been able to name it or like label it as such. I come from Chinese culture, and I realized after my awakening that Chinese people are really witchy. There were lots of things that happened within my childhood where I kind of just took it for granted as, oh, this is something that I do that's part of my culture, but is really witchy. So it's been fun to reflect on that and really just embrace all of these different senses. I think that it's a shame that we have these in us. Everyone does. And I think that the cool thing about a spiritual awakening, it's not like putting one person on a pedestal as a god or a deity that we worship, but it's like remembering and learning how to worship yourself, kind of, and like the divinity within you.
I really want to double click into the
Okay.
like if you could share more about the witchiness that was just like in your culture, in Chinese culture. Like let's just put that on the like board for let's not forget to double click into that point because that sounds so fascinating.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think I completely forgot where I was going with my
Well,
first.
that's okay. I think that was just a really beautiful share.
Okay.
Like, first of all, to
Okay.
reflect back to you, like, yes, I've been in the corporate world. I got laid off back in the day and kind of had like, it wasn't a spirit. I was still very, very asleep. But just I think what you're experiencing is just going to start happening more and more to people in traditional employment, in corporate employment. And it's so crazy to kind of be in these transitional generations where we might have looked at our parents and like they may have done a certain kind of job for their entire career, or if it wasn't the same job, it was in a certain realm. And that's not true for like all previous generations, but I think we are in this bridge generation where like Gen Z and Gen Alpha may never like stay in jobs for more than like a few years, and they may just in masses like develop their own capabilities and be consultants and whatever is like aligned to them. But we're kind of this, we're millennials, and so like figuring out how to leave a world that we were really trained to just be filtered into and like serve corporate machinery, and then to just be like kind of ejected from that can feel so just shocking. But then, as you just explained, that you started to develop and realize that you had this divinity within you, whether you could previously name it or not. And if that hadn't happened to you, you wouldn't be developing your clair senses, your intuition that was just probably like semi-tapped or untapped well within you. And I think it just speaks to that the future that you're going to claim as you develop, your path in spiritual entrepreneurship. You'll probably look back on this when you're 50, 60, 70 and just be like, thank the universe this happened.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember what I was going to say now. I think that it's such a shame that we have all of these gifts within us, and oftentimes many people are not aware of it, are afraid to tap into it, and it's not our fault. Like society shapes us into depending on our physical senses and teaches us to completely ignore and doubt our subtle senses. And there's just this untapped well of power and magic within us. And so I think that the most magical thing about my awakening has been the rediscovery of that. And it's just so empowering to know that all of that is within us and we're just like, excavating it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's so beautiful to hear. Like having kind of gone down a little bit of that or a lot of that path myself, to just when you see people out in the world who are fully going for it, and then you're navigating a path to claim your abundance through excavating those powers, like really, making them something that you can depend on, and then you know how to hear your intuition, how to trust it, and then how to layer on different subtle senses so that it can become this entirely new body of tools that you own. Like you're like the universe, the nature wants us to be able to bring this online. How different would the world look like if intuition wasn't like kind of looked at as semi crazy or some totally amorphous, non-trustable piece of data? And so the fact that you can bring that into your service, like you mentioned that you got this, whisper from your guides, like how do I become a helper to the helpers, is so powerful. And you're just stacking capabilities to make yourself more and more able to serve. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came into contact with your guides, or a little bit about what that relationship is like and how that plays into making decisions in your life and in your business?
Yeah, totally. So I think that I really started developing a relationship with my guides when I deepened my meditation practice. I meditate every morning, and that meditation time has turned into actually channeling. I'm a channeler of light, and I majority of the time channel my angelic guides. But I think that that's really where it really started. And I think that it's taken time for me to trust that I am talking to my guides because, like we've been saying, the world doesn't teach you to trust these whispers. And I think a lot of people even have a hard time distinguishing between like their thoughts and their intuition. And being able to separate those two things out is so important so that we can discern between what a thought is, how it should just like pass by because we aren't our thoughts, and to recognize when we're really getting wisdom either from our higher selves or our guides. So I think that this relationship that I've built has been largely about trusting myself and to learning how to tap in to those subtle whispers. And it's hard because even though I poured myself into all of these teachings, and I'm like, okay, I have guides. Everyone has guides. I know that they're there. I know that they want to help me, but to like know it cognitively and to actually practice the trusting part is really hard. And so I've kind of built a practice where the intuition comes in, and then unless I get a signal that it's like bad energy or not energy for my highest good, um, to be able to trust it wholeheartedly instead of doubting myself has been very helpful. I also record all of the messages that come through, especially as I've been channeling more and more every day. Profoundness of the messages, being able to read them back, even after, like right after I channel, like it'll come through and I'll write it down, kind of like automatic writing. And
Mhm.
as I channel, like I'm hearing it kind of, but it's hard for me to remember. So I would start out by meditating and then the messages would come through and then I would try to remember it all after the fact. But it just started becoming this stream of consciousness that was too long and too much to remember. So now I just type it as it comes out. And then when I reread it, even like a minute or so after I come out of the meditation, every time I'm kind of surprised, like, wow, this came out of me. And they're always like so simple, such simple messages, but so potent and powerful. So I think that like reflecting on those messages, recording them, and even sharing them has really helped me to build that relationship and build that trust in myself. And also recognizing that it's not going to be like some voice of God that comes in and like is super loud. Oftentimes it sounds like your own voice, but it's different in a way. It always speaks from a place of love instead of fear. And so, like, learning that is also really important and has helped me to strengthen that relationship.
I think listeners hearing you share that are going to get such a permission slip to allow themselves to go into this level of study if they are intuitively called into it, because it's such a courageous thing to get going, because as you mentioned, like it can be hard to differentiate what is just a passing thought that you should just let, the waves take away, and what is like a really, beautiful piece of intuition that you've been given because it's meant to inform something on your trajectory of developing yourself. And I've found in like similar pieces of my own life that I really had to develop like a deep well of self-love so that I didn't have resistance to like just allowing myself to experiment in that realm. And so as you mentioned, you had a meditative practice that then allowed you to kind of stay in the gym of your intuition and probably develop pieces of self-love. Like, have you found that developing a core self-love practice has helped you lower resistance to allowing yourself to get into the laboratory of your intuitive senses and develop like an actual channel? Because I think that's something, it's so exciting. I was getting like goosebumps as you were, telling us your story, but also just like as you can continue to grow, age, and evolve, like who can even predict how that gift that you're really giving to yourself will manifest and evolve in your life. So anything around self-love and just how it helps you continue to stay in the gym of your intuition and develop these gifts.
I love that phrase, the gym of your intuition, because it is like it's a muscle. At the end of the day, it's a muscle that you have to practice. And actually, I can share one of the guide messages that came in through today
Ooh,
that's about that exact
please.
thing, but it's about building that muscle. Yeah, so I can share that anytime you want. I can, it's kind of long, so I can read it.
Go for it.
Uh,
Go for it. Now's the
Right
perfect
now? Okay.
time. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Happy to. And as these messages have come through, I've been given lots of nudges to stop playing small, to step into my power and to own basically these messages and the gifts that I have. So this is a good practice in doing that because this was one
Yes,
of the messages that I was nudged to, like, this is important to share with the people that are on this path. So hopefully it's
that's amazing.
been helpful. We are here, my child. The time has come for you to trust yourself wholeheartedly, to feel this trust not only in your mind, but in your heart and body, your entire essence of being. It is no mistake that you're here in this moment, surrounded by these people participating in these acts of service to the collective. We are in a crucial time on earth where the light is turning from darkness to golden light. You can feel it in your bones, you know this to be true, and you are an essential part of this sequence of events. Every single point of light is needed in order for us to usher in this new golden era. You are noticing many shifts, both planetary and within the collective. Trust in yourself, especially during this time. It is crucial to build a relationship with your intuition. It will not only grow stronger as you tap in and trust it more. This is the fallacy of humans. You have been given a powerful gift. You have the power of creation, but you choose not to use it. Instead, believing that you are a victim of what occurs around you. This couldn't be further from the truth. You are in the driver's seat, but you must choose to engage with the controls. You must choose to believe that the power lies in your hands. Many are scared of wielding this power, for it essentially means that whatever circumstances they're in, they have caused and created of their own doing. Many cannot accept this responsibility, but this new time requires us all to be divine and conscious creators. This is your birthright. It is time to step into your role. You are ready. You are more ready than you have ever been. You can feel it in the air, the static electricity that surrounds you as you dream, manifest, and create. It is happening. It is already done. But this work can only be completed if you trust in yourself and the power of your creation. It is a hard task on this plane, but you are more than capable. Continue to practice, to lean in, to be in community with others who are on the golden path. Stay in the light, and you will continue to grow exponentially by leaps and bounds every day. We are here always, and you are divinely held and guided, not just by us, but by your entire team, your highest spirit self, and the entire cosmos.
I love that was beautiful, Dana. Thank you so much for sharing something that
Thank
I
you for
know,
letting me share.
yeah, may feel vulnerable, but I think that's like such an permission slip and exposition of standing in your power, like a power that you've had to do work to develop. So
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. Thank you.
Thank you
And what
so
a
much.
beautiful message of like if as a collective we want to step into our collective birthright, it has to come through us stepping into our individual birthright and claiming our gifts and bringing our own lights forward so that we can see, when we bring our light forward, we can see the lights of others. I think we're both in a similar situation that we chose to step into the scariness of becoming our true highest evolved selves that has like it has to stand on a foundation of claiming our abundance through our aligned gifts. And so joining, the program that we're both in that is helping us, really stand up all of the pieces of our spiritual businesses, I've noticed such a shift just in that time of like being able to connect with people like yourself who are facing their fears and knowing that they're there and saying, but it's my contribution. Like my self love has to, activate in myself so that I can then donate it and play in the collective of other people that are doing this. And finding other people who are just like so gung ho is so cool. And so to hear your powerful channel is just a real gift. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you, and thank you for receiving. And I think that it really illuminates the power of one, committing to yourself and your purpose, and two, just like the power of community and being with people who are on a similar path. And I think that that's one thing that really happened in a quantum leap when I committed to myself in this journey. Like the synchronicities that have happened, the magic that has happened as I stepped onto and really committed to my purpose has been just mind blowing. Like I've crossed paths with people who I know are meant to amplify this role that I'm stepping into, and like vice versa. Like we're playing that role for each other, and we're amplifying each other's light and clearing that path for others to awaken and to really support them as they step into this journey themselves.
Yeah, like beautifully said. And it's funny you mentioned, well, it's not funny, it's really cool. I looked at your astrology before we got on this call, not just your birth chart, but also the personal natal transits that you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So we, in astrology, we have like our birth chart, and then there's all the global transits of what's going on with where the planets are in the sky right now. But then one of my favorite pieces that really helps kind of guide us and initiate us into the waves of change that each of us are going through that help us claim new growth paths and kind of see the wave of change energy that's coming at us, that's saying like you're ready to step into a new version of your consciousness or develop a realm of your consciousness that maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you weren't ready to actually navigate. And so I'm just going to pull it up because you are
Yeah.
going through a major transit. I went through this in the last couple of years. Everyone who's kind of like in their late 30s, 40s goes through your Pluto square Pluto transits, and you're going through your transit Pluto in Capricorn, but it's been bouncing back and forth between Pluto and Aquarius and Pluto and Capricorn, square your natal Pluto in Scorpio going through your ninth house. And it started in November of 2023 and it's continuing to February of 2025. So like this is the like era of you stepping into your power. So it's super cool. I mean, the tower moments can rock us, but they are meant to like catapult us into new growth. And it sounds like you're like this is not falling on deaf ears for you. You're like grabbing the wheel by the horns. Wait, grabbing the I think I said that wrong.
The bull by the
You're
horns.
the bull. You're grabbing the wheel and the bull by the horns at the same time, supported by your beautiful cat Jax,
Yes.
and just like letting your power, like the power that's been mycelially developing in you your whole life, but now just really like learning how to step into it. And so it's really cool to see that you're in that season and you're juicing it for all it's worth.
Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I cognitively know that this is in my highest good and that this transformation is bringing me to my most authentic and highest self, but it's still really hard.
Yes,
Um,
let's not underscore that.
yeah, yeah. And I also want to normalize that. Like that is transformation is meant to be hard and it's meant to make you grow to the point of discomfort. And I think really becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable is a crucial part of this transformation because it could be so easy to just meet that resistance and stop. So it's like
Yeah.
learning to be there and say, okay, this is really uncomfortable. This is really scary. I'm terrified right now, but I'm going to push past it. And I think that my commitment and interest in just healing and trauma informed therapy in general has really prepped me to meet that fear and that resistance head on.
Yeah, because as you serve spiritual entrepreneurs, all of the healing and experience that you're gaining, and really just moving through, like powered by self-love and then nudged on by your intuition and your ability to hear your guides clearly, is going to help you, is helping you become a super powerful healer and do your mission of helping the helpers. And so that's a great place for us to touch on the path of navigating limiting beliefs. And I think entrepreneurship is like the roller coaster water slide, that kind of has some sandpaper parts in it too, of like, so you want a life of, abundant freedom where you're serving the collective, like powered by your gifts. Well, you're gonna have to like face the like funhouse mirror, like highway of your own fears. So can you tell us, and I love how you mentioned that you want to navigate, like, a spiritual awakening is absolutely not this like glimmery unicorn bubble path of like coming into some kind of godly powers, ushered on by trumpeted angels. It can be so messy. I've gone through this 100%, like so many times through this journey. It's felt like I'm driving a car that like the gears are all wrong and I have to like really figure out in my own mental world, and like powered by my heart. It's almost like figuring out how to connect my mental, patterns that have been installed in me over 42 years to my heart that knows a truth. And so tell us about your like path of limiting beliefs that you have been navigating and how you just like make it through because you know that you're showing up for like a path that's super meant for you, that's, meant to help everyone at the end of the day.
Totally. And I just want to touch on like the sandpapery part. Like it's so sandpapery. But I think that what that is like we as humans living in a 3D world have to adopt certain like norms and programming that have gotten us to this point. And until you are in a place where you're ready to awaken, you're like wearing those programming, those limiting beliefs that have gotten you in this 3D world this far. You're wearing them like coats. And then like as you go through this transformation, you're like painfully stripping away like layers of things that just no longer serve you and really like opening your eyes to how these beliefs have been really oppressing you instead of empowering you. So limiting beliefs. Oh gosh, I have built such a relationship with my limiting beliefs. And I think that a big part of navigating limiting beliefs is understanding that you are not your beliefs, you are not your thoughts, and that these limiting beliefs are going to come up as part of your ego. Like it's your ego's way of trying to keep you alive, to help you survive, and really building a relationship with that part of you. I'm a huge fan of IFS and parts work. So seeing, I think, those parts of me as things that have helped me get to where I am and have kept me alive up until this point, and just having a lot of love and compassion for myself as those parts of me show up, and not tamping them down, because I think a lot of people think of healing as like getting rid of a part of yourself that no longer serves you. But I think healing is really, to me, about loving every part of you, even the parts of you that may not serve you anymore, and showing love to that part of myself that says, gosh, this is really scary. I don't think that I can do this. And just sitting with that part and saying, thank you. I know you're trying to protect me, but that's not what my highest self is saying. But I love you anyway. So, really observing all of those things come up and reparenting them and showing them compassion. And I never thought of myself as a coach when I started on this path, but as I've talked to more and more spiritual entrepreneurs during my market research calls, I've noticed that a lot of similar fears that I am going through are coming up in the collective. And I think that I have a ton of support and within myself and within the community, and that allows me to have the resources that I need to push past those fears. But a lot of people don't. So one of the really fulfilling, like surprising things for me on this path has been to act as spiritual support through those moments for the healers that I've been talking to. Because I think that it's so important to have someone that can provide that external validation for you in the beginning, but also to remind you that everything that you need is within yourself and that that you got this.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that the path of facing your fears and acknowledging them, and as you mentioned, from kind of a parts work perspective, to acknowledge that all of the parts of you that may have different things to say about the path you are trying to claim, they have their own rationale for bringing this awareness to you, and to be able to say, like, thank you, like this mentality of thinking may have been what I needed when I was 12 or 16 or 2, and so like you got me to where I am now. But now we need to let new parts of us step in, because what got us here is not necessarily what's going to get us to where we need to go. And so, like, making it not a, nothing where we're criticizing the parts of us that, because facing your fears can seem like such a long process, and like, why am I still having these limiting beliefs? Like, like I thought I dealt with that 3 months ago, but now here it is again, trying to kind of like be a little bit of a crabs in the bucket. But then when you reframe it and you say, this is just a part of me, and when I really bring awareness to it, that part can feel safe and say, like, all right, well, now that I know that you hear me, like, you're going to also take in the counsel of the new parts of yourself, or the next level of yourself, that you're almost like learning to hear in greater and greater bandwidth as you develop your intuition, your self-love, the gifts of hearing your guides. And so I think I love that you're also stepping into the coaching side of yourself, because helping the helpers doesn't mean just using all of the beautiful creative gifts that you have from your sun in Virgo in the fifth house, which just, means that you have like your vitality, and the fuel you run on is to create beauty, but also to use your moon in Pisces in the 11th house, where you have like deep, deep psychic, spiritual empathy that understands that as the collective moves towards this reckoning, of like, we're going to have to let go of a lot in ourselves, but let go of a lot in the collective for the betterment, and kind of churn that into what is the new iteration of humanity that can work together. You're so perfectly poised to use those communicative, intuitive gifts that like have empathy for the difficulties that people are going to go through as they individually step through this process, and what it means for the collective. So thank you for sharing that path that you're navigating, and normalizing that it's hard, but like it really is for the best for all of us.
Totally. And also recognizing that healing is not linear. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned like, oh, this is coming up for me again. And I think that it can be easy to feel defeated or disheartened when you're learning a lesson for the umpteenth time. But
Yeah.
just having compassion for yourself, because think about how many years that belief has been ingrained in you and reinforced by 3D living, allowing patience with your path and trusting that you will get there in your own divine timing, and that you may have to learn things more than once in order to really create a new belief is super important.
I love that. And we're going to talk about claiming identity through branding in a second, but I don't want to forget our little like thing we left on the parking board of, can
Yes,
you
yes.
or the parking lot, claiming the bull by the horns. Sometimes I just say things out of order, but like I know what they mean, so hopefully people listening to it too. But
Yes.
can you tell us, like, I just like got really like fascinated about like realizing that your culture, Chinese culture, had witchiness, and maybe that's not how it's like talked about or branded, but like what are some of the things, and like how did that feel to realize like I have like ancestral power that like is here for me to claim, maybe reinvent, maybe evolve into new, like a future that only you and your intuitive gifts know how to kind of morph and evolve. But like, tell us a little bit about that journey and any insights you've gotten through that process.
Yeah, it's been really trippy and cool to just remember all of the ways in which my childhood was really witchy. And
I love that. I just love that.
Yeah, like having also like patience and grace with myself because I didn't really embrace it when I was younger. You know, culture is it can be an unwieldy thing for a young person, and I think that I definitely went through a period where I rejected my culture because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like everyone else, and I grew up in a school where there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. So it was much easier for me to try to assimilate and to reject all of the weird things that my family did. But looking back, you know, my mom was very in tune with energy. If you think of like traditional Chinese medicine, there's a ton of like spirituality within that practice, really tuning into the ways in which our body stores trauma and energy, how there can be blockages in the flow of your energy. If you've ever done like Qigong or any sort of like energy healing modalities, Tai Chi, that's all about moving and allowing energy to flow. That's really witchy. I
Yeah.
remember when we went to funerals when I was younger. My mom would have us like bathe our faces and like our hands in the citrus water to kind of cleanse our energy of and to protect our space of anything that we might have picked up at the funeral. I think also like making sure that the spirits didn't follow us to our homes. My mom comes from like a Buddhist religion, so there was a lot of like praying, a lot of incense lighting, clearing. There's also this really witchy practice that is still really trippy for me to think about. But so when I was sick, when I was a kid, she would boil eggs, hard boiled eggs, and then she would take the egg apart and she would put in these coins into the eggs, into like the egg white. And wrap all of that into like a towel. So within traditional Chinese medicine, one of the concepts is that you can have too many of one element within your body, and that imbalance can cause physical or mental disease. And so when I was sick, she would roll this egg with this coin in it all along my face. And the coin would turn a different color based on what element you had too much of in your body. And then she would, boil herbs or change my diet according to what the imbalance was. And this was just like completely normal to me. And then as I went through my awakening, I was like, this is so witchy. Like even just the
I
herbs.
love it.
So like being
Yeah.
able to tap into that and like know that this really truly was in me all along and I just didn't think of it in that context has been a really cool discovery.
Just so amazing that your mom just had this tech on
Yeah,
deck.
I know, right?
You know, like holy shit, if I like I'm gonna have to ping you offline and be like, can you tell me the color changing coin egg ritual? Because I'm gonna do that. But I just love that you're like now able to have a renaissance of realizing that not only were you being imbued with magical rituals, practice, you know, and energy through just like being in your culture that is you, and you have like ancestral roots of things that just are yours to tap into. And you know, my culture's just forgotten like a lot of things, you know, that used to be like super normal and like how you would navigate the world. And so to go try and reclaim that can be an onerous, arduous process. And you know, definitely like moving through the practice, through like the limiting beliefs of like, well, this might be fake because like regular degular culture has like castigated a lot of these practices. But I love that for you, that it was normal in your childhood and that you just had like a true badass witch as a mom who was like bringing all her tools out of her tool shed and like being like, okay, that's like you know, a green color, a blue color, we need to go get like, these are the herbs I'm gonna put, you know, or like boil up for that. I love that, and I assume that that will just be like a beautiful place of like rediscovery, like bringing it to the surface that you can integrate with everything else that you're developing in your spiritual toolkit. So thank you for sharing that part of your culture with us. And I my cheeks were starting to hurt smiling from just listening to you tell that story.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's
So
also really
cool.
cool to think about how like all of those rituals and practices have been developed over like, you know, millennia and having the potency of your ancestors and the practices that they cultivated over such a long time, like
Yeah.
be here in the present day with you feels so powerful to me.
It's like you're seeing time magic work, for people who 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Like I love the I Ching, and like the gene keys, which is kind of like based on that. And so to
Mm-hmm.
just realize that, thousands of years ago, people who didn't have all the technology that can distract us, I'm grateful for penicillin and like being able to connect with you over this computer in real time. But to realize that technology isn't just electricity and like metals and like things that you can physically build. There are all kinds of technologies that are more of the subtle nature, and to be able to almost like feel back into time through utilizing practices that have been developed so long ago but have also been passed on through the linkages of every generation to generation, and that you're now, you're stepping into being in charge of being a transit and a portal through which that kind of technology will continue to move into the next generation, is really just gives us this like idea of like we're very important. Any individual alive today is crucial for the global mission of all of humanity that started with all of us, like however, like back into time immemorial. Like you're just as important. And so I love that you've been able to have like tangible experiences to recognize what a rich inheritance you have in your ancestral line.
Yeah, totally. That also reminds me of, I am very witchy and I enjoy learning about ancient pagan rituals. And so it reminds me of that, like being able to connect a lot of the practices and traditions and rituals that we do present day back to really ancient roots and how normal it was to connect with our ancestors. Like it wasn't considered like a weird or witchy or outlandish thing. It was just something that we did. Like they would hold dumb suppers where you would present your ancestors with food and then really invite them in to connect with them all the time. And it was just such a normal thing. So like I'm super into connecting to those ancient roots from all different
I love
cultures.
that. Yeah. And I hope that that becomes very normal over the course of, the next few decades, of allowing everyone to look back into their own history, because I think it's so important, when there are things that we look around the world and say, God, why are these traumatic, just absolutely unjust, insane things happening? Like to put the story together really requires like delving into our roots and having compassion for everything that previous generations went through to survive so that we could just be here, and how that really like has so much importance on like what we are doing to excavate our own power so that we make the future, if not easier for future generations, just make it so that we take care of the work that we came here specifically to perform and to do in this lifetime, so that the next generations can focus on exactly what they're meant to do, and that our ancestors did that for us. And so we really are just like part of this circle of magic in the human collective. We just I love humanity, even though like we are wild. Like I'm sure the aliens are like, y'all are wild, but we we are such a beautiful species, and I feel like that's what we're trying to like excavate, is like where we can step into more beauty. And it's like a whole nother podcast to get into like how that's all going to come about, but I feel like you and I and the people that we are connecting with are like really tapped into that and super committed. And so that leads me to a question of, you have this deep ability to communicate identity and like through visual aesthetics, graphic design, and everything that's within the sphere of your services. So how have you, can you tell us a little bit about how you've stepped into claiming, the identity that you have now? And you may have new identities that you have an eye towards the future on who you're becoming, but just how visual aesthetics, how like, I love, like we were talking earlier, I was like, I love your purple streaks. And so, there are many things to an identity, but how have you stepped into this witchy identity, this intuitive identity, and any kind of tips and tricks that you can give to people who like may see that as part of their future, but they have limiting beliefs or fears stepping, of like actually doing the damn thing? And so anything you can share around that process for yourself would be cool.
Yeah. So I think that the process of stepping into my current identity has really been about stripping away. non-essential things. Kind of what we were talking about before, like shedding that coat of limiting beliefs, old programming, um, and becoming my most authentic self. I think that that's a really important part of stepping into your power, being able to witness with compassion and grace and patience, like all of the things that no longer serve you, no longer serve the path that you want to be on, and really becoming like a curious, conscious observer, cultivating that level of self-awareness and just becoming really curious. Like, where did this belief start? Where did it come from? Like, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Where did it originate? When did I first feel this? And I think all of that practice really helps you to lean into your intuition and to more easily leave behind the things that shouldn't be coming with you on this new path. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like
Okay.
sometimes the best addition is subtraction. Like because you
Yes.
feel lighter and more free to move into like whatever your intuition is telling you. Like, no, this is the era where you step into power that the previous versions of you would have been afraid to claim. And that might look like a different version of yourself. That version of yourself may speak differently. That version of yourself may step into spaces that you haven't been in before. And, like I've loved following your content. Just, as someone who myself, I'm not a graphic designer. I have creative passion, but I'm not trained in that realm. And so I've loved just seeing you as you've shared not only the services you're offering, but just like how you seem to have like a great strength in sharing some of your channeled messages. And you're really just not afraid to blend like, yes, I can help you get into like the nuts and bolts of like graphic design and what a visual brand identity would be, but it's also coming with this like really heart-led, intuitive, like frankly like very magical kind of aura from you. And so that's been really inspiring. I just like sometimes I like screenshot your posts and I'm like, I need to come back to that for inspiration later when I do my
I
own.
love
Um,
that.
yeah, no, for real. I totally like screenshotted like some of your stuff and I was like, "Ooh, nice, nice, nice." So, and I love that you're doing it for yourself. So you are figuring out the pathway of how you are leading other spiritual entrepreneurs through this process, and you can kind of like pick them up when they fall into like ruts or don't understand what the next step forward is. So tell us a little bit about your services, like maybe a little example of how you would guide someone through a session, and then any of your offerings that are longer, bigger, like whatever you are stepping into service now that you want people to know about. Because whoever's listening to this, if you're a spiritual entrepreneur who has tons of gifts in other areas, but graphic design and visual brand and identity might not be one of them, I want them to know how to work with you and where to find you. So tell us all that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. So my signature offering is definitely going to be evolving as I go through this coaching program, but as it currently stands, it's called the Ace of Pentacles, and it's all about being guided by a creative and spiritual partner through the creative process. So I understand that there's lots of people that might be creative, but they don't want to focus on learning what you need to know about SEO, about brand identity, about how to create a logo and find colors that are in harmony with your brand identity, and messaging I think is a really big part of it. So my offering kind of touches on all of those three things: branding, design, and web, with the goal of creating something that's beautiful, that looks professional, that provides credibility and trust for your soulmate clients, that really reflects the unique magic that you have within you authentically, so that you can focus on what you really do best, which is healing. So it's a really guided program. And I think that as I go through some of these market research calls, I'm finding that there are people in lots of different parts of their journey and that might need different levels of engagement or support. But the way that the offering is currently is I kind of guide you through the entire process and really tease out all of the things that are already within you. And what I'm finding is that the magic is already there. You just need someone to guide you through that process of really discovering what your value is, who you're really trying to talk to, what that messaging might look like, and translating that into website copy, into branded elements, into a beautiful website that helps your soulmate clients to really understand the value that you're serving so that you can focus on healing.
I love that. I love that the internet, through people like you, is getting more beautiful, more normalizing of witchy, magical, subtle technologies, and that through your own tower moments and surrendering to change that has come into your life, through just being like, all right, I'm in my spiritual awakening, and that is, it can be scary, but it's meant to usher me into your gifts, and that you've developed offerings that, through your own healing of yourself, are going to allow you to be a confident partner with all of these intuitive gifts, that it can allow people to just put all of that out on the internet so that the people who need them can see that they are exactly who they need. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think that, what I really want to impart on my clients, let's try that again. What I really want to do to support my clients is to share best practices, little things that they can do that they're probably not yet doing because they haven't been trained in this, maybe, that can help them to reach more people, to get really clear on the value that they have and how they can speak to it in a language that their clients speak in order to break through the noise, because there is a lot of noise, and really help them to focus in on the unique magic that provides these magical outcomes for their clients. And I think there's a lot of mistakes that people make that can be easily remedied, but being able to sit down with someone, really listen to them in a heart space, and to connect with them on a deep level, and help tease out some of these things that are already within them. Because I'm not giving them anything that's not already there. I'm really just helping them to excavate it and to uncover it the way that you do with yourself in your own spiritual awakening, really helping them to uncover the things that are already within them, and using my power of clear cognizance to translate it into a way that's super easy to understand. So a typical session could look like a brand workshop where we spend a couple of hours together, and I ask you some questions to help you reflect on your unique offerings and the value that you provide. And then we kind of together co-create this brand identity that's really clear, that makes you feel really validated and in touch with your authentic power, and in a way that is really easy to understand. Because I think that one of the things that people get stuck in is they know how it sounds to them and it makes sense in their head, and they approach their branding and their web from that lens, like, oh, this makes sense to me, it's going to make sense to everyone else. But that's not really the way that you create an effective brand. It really has to be outcome focused, it really has to be client focused. So making that subtle shift and asking those questions to help them uncover what's already there is, I think, super powerful.
I love that. And I think that just speaks to to any spiritual entrepreneurs who are listening, who are getting their ears perked up by hearing what you've got to share about this process, is that, it is so valuable to invest in your gifts by bringing in the right experts when there's something that you've got ideas around, but it's just not your skill set. It's not your deep well of expertise on how to do something, and how nurturing and how self-loving it can feel to actually give yourself the gift of working with someone where that truly is where they've spent their time developing their gifts and they've gone through that process themselves. So I just love that, and I'm sure that anyone who's hearing this podcast, who needs those kind of services, is probably going to get your Instagram. So before we get to where people can find you, I just want to give you the opportunity to are there any other things that you want to leave our audience with or share before we wrap up?
I think that Like just to touch on the point that you just made, I think that there's a lot of people that make the mistake of like, oh, I can do this myself, or I want to do this myself. But if you've ever done a DIY project that's not your jam and you spend like 20 times the amount of the amount of time doing it versus like investing in
Feeling
allowing
called
someone
out.
else, yeah, allowing someone else to like live in their zone of genius, that's really the gift that I want to give to my clients, like allowing me to follow my soul's purpose and doing the things that actually light me up so that you can focus your energy and your time, because that is very scarce, on doing the things that you really enjoy doing instead of toiling over something that feels so tedious to you, because that comes through in what you create. If you hate what you're creating, if you hate SEO, if you hate marketing, if you hate design, like that's not the place that you want to be creating from. So being able to work with someone whose passion it is to do those things and um, who has been there, who has been through painful transformation, who knows how it feels to face the fears of spiritual entrepreneurship and limiting beliefs, I think is super important, because those fears are going to come up. They don't just go away because you decide to commit to yourself. I think that that's really important to do, but they'll continue to be there. And to have someone that is spiritual, that knows the language, that knows the industry and the community, I think is just crucial. And it's helped me a ton, and that's the support that I hope to also provide to other people.
Yeah, well, I think this conversation makes it abundantly clear that you've done so much work on yourself, and now that you are, and it's involved so many different fascinating types of healing. And I love the curiosity that you mentioned, where, you're just open to looking into methodologies and technologies from all over the world as you, honor your own culture and deepen those connections, and that it's allowed you to like find this completely new pathway that has like all of the beauty of independence and sovereignty with which to get out your mega creative gifts, where you have spent your whole career. Like, you're not new to graphic design and visual identity, you're just now bringing in all of the riches that have come from facing a major spiritual awakening and a transition in your own life. And I think that that is really going to be such a beautiful highway that you cruise down for the rest of your life as you lock this in. And then just the feelings of satisfaction and gratification that you get as you aid other spiritual entrepreneurs who are doing the same thing, just in different modalities and different niches and specialties. It's just really cool to see. It just like makes me really feel like the new world is like taken off through the grains of sand on the beach that each one of us are. And so thank you for sharing like the vulnerability that you've walked us through in your journey, and just like all of the really cool stories. Like I definitely need the recipe for this egg magic that your mom did. And like shout out to your mom for being a bad bitch witch. Yeah, just, and before we wrap up though, where can people find you? Tell us your IG, your Instagram, any other platforms that you are dropping your content on. And I follow Dana's content. Like I love it all the time when I see you have a new story and I'm like, what kind of tips and tricks can I get from her? So tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram under the Moon Priestess 1111, and 1111 is my angel number if you're into angel numbers. It started out as kind of my visual journal of my spiritual awakening. I really just wanted to chronicle it for myself and also to help people who are also going through something similar, so that they can not feel like they're alone in what they're going through, and also learn through some of the painful and hard lessons that I've gone through. And that's slowly morphed into my business account. So it's kind of like a mixture of both now. I also share my
Love
channeled
it.
messages there. And to check out my services, you can go to moonpriestessdesign.com. And that is also on my Instagram. I'm just starting a new newsletter called Getting Unstuck, where I'm going to be sharing little tidbits of information about branding and web, stuff within my spiritual awakening, my entrepreneurship journey. I really just want to help people feel unstuck. I think a theme that I'm seeing in these market research calls is that a lot of people want to step into this journey, but they don't know what step to take next. So I keep hearing like, I feel so stuck. So I hope that this letter helps people to feel unstuck and gives them the like next best action to take to step into this path of purpose.
I love it. I'm one of your subscribers, so can't wait for the next one to drop. Well, thank you so much, Dana. This was such a fun conversation. I learned a ton. I got inspired. And just thank you again for showing up as the full authentic self of who you are as you go in this discovery process and offering your gifts to everyone from the capacity of helping the helpers. It's so important.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.